I feel like we're really reverting back to like just right after 9/11, where it just became brown people bad, white people good, especially here in Canada. It seems like tensions are really on the rise, and it doesn't really help that there was an international day of jihad or some sort of day of violence on Friday the 13th against Jewish people around the world. Welcome back to another video, everybody. This is obviously about the war in Israel and Palestine. And before we get into it, I want to encourage you to give a like and subscribe if you haven't yet already. It really helps grow the channel, as well as consider turning post notifications on, because here in Canada, we're fighting Justin Trudeau's suppression on YouTube and also government suppression and YouTube suppression. So there's a lot of different reasons why you should hit that notification bell. And if you'd like to support the channel in any way and you like oil and gas, get a limited edition sticker, which is I love Canadian oil and gas. Link for that is down in the description or the pinned comment below. Now, here's what we're talking about. The National Post put out an article saying, remain vigilant as calls for global day of jihad circulate online, says the FBI. And this is for Friday the 13th. And obviously, this is the Hamas, or a former leader of the Hamas, called for Day of Jihad on Friday the 13th. Much of the concern stems from online posts in which former Hamas leader called for this to happen. And it's very scary. So how does this affect Canada? Because this is a Canadian channel. And obviously, we're not really into geopolitics yet. Starting to get into it a little bit. Dabble, tinkle our toes in there. But when you do a quick Google search of calls for violence in Canada against Jewish people, you're brought to a really tremendous amount of articles from all the mainstream media outlets here saying RCMP is aware of online threats to Canadian Jewish communities. Police are reassuring residents that no credible threats to Toronto Jewish communities. That's kind of contradicting. I mean, one day ago, one is 22 hours ago, you got CTV saying safety ministers respond to calls for protests. Like, there's a lot of things happening at once. So I got a lot of breadcrumb trails just stacked together for this video. So let's take a look at CBC's coverage, where the RCMP is aware of online threats to Canadian Jewish communities, calls for increased vigilance.
Jewish communities in Canada and around the world are on edge.
Our communities have spoken clearly that they don't feel safe, and we are being responsive to that concern.
After a former Hamas leader called for a day of action Friday. In Toronto, command posts set up in the heart of this predominantly Jewish neighborhood, as police in the city and across the country step up patrols, though they say there have been no credible threats. And in Montreal, the Jewish General Hospital is encouraging the cancellation of non-essential appointments.
And hopefully, Montrealers, we can resist together, to this hatred that is happening.
Precautions are also being taken at Jewish institutions across Europe and the United States. Back in Toronto, police arrested 3 men, the hate crime unit now investigating after alleged threats outside of a Jewish school.
I hope tomorrow will be an opportunity for us to test the safety and security that we feel here in Canada.
Some parents with children at Jewish day schools are keeping them home Friday, but Maya Roth's 4 children will be in class.
They need structure. They need a sense of normalcy during these times.
Rabbi Jared Grover has been working directly with Toronto police. He says fear and anxiety are warranted, but he has been counseling resiliency.
You don't cower. You stand up to bullies. I am sending my children to school tomorrow. I have young children in Jewish day schools. I'm encouraging my friends to send their children to school.
The same concern in Muslim communities, where police are also increasing their presence.
The idea that you have to be protected as you simply go to a mosque for prayer is something it's not comforting. It's unfathomable. It shouldn't be happening in Canada.
A shared emotion as a war happening a world away is felt in communities across the country. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments of this. Would you keep your kids in Jewish schools if that's where they were, or would you pull them out? Because this isn't just some like grungy Twitter post that, Dragon Slayer 69 or whatever posted. Like, this is directly from the FBI, White House intelligence. This is common knowledge that is circulating where it's not misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation. It's a global scale call for day of jihad or whatever it's called. And it has a lot of people really freaked out, and it's not advancing, I guess, progressiveness, which is something that Canada is quite known for. It seems like we're going backwards, and whether you agree or disagree with progressiveness, this is just adding to racial profiling, and I don't think that that's good. And I think that we should be focusing on peace and unity and love and, you know, all that hippy dippy stuff, because it seems like every country around the world is like, yeah, let's go get them. Why are we so focused on let's go get them? Why are we not having any global leaders, world leaders, politicians saying, let's just go for peace? And speaking of peace, let's see what Justin Trudeau has to say about the Israel-Hamas conflict.
We continue to be in contact with the families of the 3 Canadians who are reported missing. We're providing support, and we're also in close contact with the local authorities. The safety and security of Canadians at home and abroad is always our top priority. The situation on the ground is volatile. We're actively helping our citizens and permanent residents come back to Canada. I can confirm that a first Canadian Armed Forces flight has departed Tel Aviv with approximately 130 passengers and has landed safely in Athens. As we speak, a second plane has already landed in Tel Aviv and will bring people to Athens in a few hours. And we're working on additional options for those who cannot reach the airport in Tel Aviv. To provide assistance and logistical support, we're also deploying members of our standing rapid deployment team to the region. This is a unit of specialized officials who are specifically trained to help during times of emergencies or crisis. Canadians who wish to leave or who need assistance can contact our embassy in Tel Aviv, our offices in Ramallah, or of course our offices in Ottawa. We're working around the clock to support you. We'll continue to follow the situation as it evolves and continue our efforts with international partners. La violence qu'on a vue.
Now, here's where it gets very weird, because Canada and other countries from around the world are sending in these rescue teams for Israelis. What about the innocent Palestinians that are being held within Palestine or within Gaza against their will by the terrorist regime as known as the Hamas? So it seems like the government or the Five Eyes or whatever they're called, right? The G7 countries, the good guys, us, that we've just picked a side, and it's Israel good, Palestine and Palestinians bad. And I just don't agree with that, but I'm also not as educated in this, given I'm a Westerner, as someone who is living there or some sort of history buff. So I've got more of a breadcrumb trail. Just stick with me here. This article is about a BC church group that is stranded amid escalating Israel and Hamas conflict. A group of BC church individuals that have been touring historical sites in Israel when Hamas fighters began killing civilians is struggling to find a way home with the confusion of the war and lack of support from the Canadian government. Now, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I think that Canada's response, from what I've seen, has been pretty decent to organize a international response in a war zone. It took them like 2.5 days to have all the logistics ready to go. I think that's pretty good. I feel like our response for this has been, maybe above standard, just from what I've seen in the past. But again, you've only heard the Canadian government talk about Israeli people or people that are stuck in Israel that have Canadian citizenship. So far we've seen one plane full of individuals have been rescued from Israel, from Tel Aviv, and have been brought to Athens. We don't know what the logistics of that looks like once they're in Athens, if they're given money or food or accommodations or whatever it is. It feels like they just got dropped off at the airport and then the plane fueled up and went back. We don't really know the specifics, so it's pretty much why it's important to subscribe to this channel and turn those post notifications on so you can get the updates, because I'm consuming this content all day and it's driving me a little, well, not too good, because it's pretty disturbing, everything that's happening, but I'm trying to give you guys the truth as to what is happening. So let's take a look at this next video here.
An increased police presence near some of Toronto's most prominent Jewish institutions, ahead of a day of global demonstrations called on by the former leader of Hamas, putting the community on edge.
There's no specific threat to the city of Toronto. However, our communities have spoken clearly that they don't feel safe, and we are being responsive to that concern.
A similar sentiment shared in Ottawa, with police saying there have been no reported hate-motivated incidents targeting either a Palestinian, Muslim, or Jewish community member.
We must always stand united as Canadians. This is something that is core to Canada. We take care of each other.
Despite the political and police reassurances, some Jewish Canadians are taking extra precautions. Global News has agreed to not identify this mother, who's pulling her 6- and 9-year-olds out of school tomorrow.
I've had very scary thoughts. Dropping my kids off at school this week felt different than it did in the past.
The principal of Ottawa's largest Jewish school seeing some families follow suit.
Most parents are choosing to continue to send their kids to school. Of course, every now and again, a parent is holding a different kind of anxiety, and we understand that.
John Mitzmacher crediting the resilience of his students and staff.
These are teachers who show up every day with broken hearts and whose job it is to show up and be present and emotionally available for children who desperately need them.
Similar unease being felt by Palestinian Canadians, as the National Council of Canadian Muslims is set to hold an emergency meeting tonight on Islamophobia.
From the perspective of our community, there is a little bit of unrest, a little bit of people who are feeling anxious.
The RCMP say they're aware of threats against the Jewish community on social media and are calling on Canadians to use increased vigilance. Donna?
Mackenzie, thanks.
Now, there have been quite a few videos circulating the internet. I'm not going to pull them up. It's a little unsettling, and I don't really want to do it. But if you know, you know. And if you don't know, then you can find them on X and Twitter or whatever, of Jewish communities being attacked here in Canada or in America. Now, not to the extent of bombings or that, but of you have Palestine supporters, I suppose, or Hamas supporters, I guess is more specific in the proper terminology here, where they've gone outside of Jewish schools or communities saying we're going to kill you and blah, 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 and making those types of threats. And that's in light of the announcement for Friday the 13th, International or Global Day of Jihad. So there are real tangible threats here, but as you heard in the ending of that video, this is adding to the Islamophobia, and we're kind of going back to post like immediately after 9/11, where again it's bad or brown is bad and white is good, and that's not the case. There's a lot of Palestinian people that don't agree with the Hamas. I would at least hope. There's a lot of Israeli people that don't agree with the the tactics that Israel has been using, and there's also a lot of mis and disinformation and malinformation. I hate to use those words. Just a lot of wrong info. How about that? There's a lot of wrong information circulating the internet, and even the media has been guilty of sharing them, such as the photo. And I will 100% not pull this up, even though it's been proven to be an AI generated photo. But even Ben Shapiro shared a photo of what seemed like and what was broadcasted as burnt up babies, like a corpse of a baby. And when you kind of zoom in on it, it didn't look like it. I did share it with a friend before I went public with it, and I've since decided not to go public with that photo, but it's been debunked, and it's actually an AI photo, AI generated photo. So there's a lot of weird, wrong info circulating out there, and we don't really know right now what's true and what's not. And the longer we wait, the more that the mainstream media has their grips on the narrative. So will we ever know the exact truth? Probably not. And that feels there's parallels between what's happening now and what happened with the war between Russia and Ukraine when that first broke out, where you were just exposed to this overwhelming amount of information out there. But what we all can agree on is advocating for peace and not targeting innocent civilians, women, and children. There's rules of warfare, basically, and it feels like both sides have broken rules of warfare, and the West, the powerhouse of the world, America, has decided to back one side over the other, and it's just hard to know what's real. But the truth is that we should be advocating for peace, and we shouldn't be bringing this type of barbaric behavior to Canada. But I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments. Maybe you disagree with anything I've said or any of the information that I've shared. I'd love to know what you guys have to say. That's where we're going to end today's video. I'd like to encourage you to give a like and subscribe if you haven't yet already. Really helps grow the channel, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.